How you doing, folks? You're watching Live with Onrie, and I'm your host, Onrie Compen. Today's guest is somebody I have been wanting to have on the show for a long time now. This dude is putting out some crazy, sick comics. He has a series called Broken Gargoyles, which I cannot wait to get my hands on the physical copy. I was fortunate enough to download a PDF while he had it up for a very small window of time to kind of get some feelers out there, and it was a fantastic read. I cannot wait to get the physical copy. I am so on board this series. I even let my LCS know that they need to stock up on this book because I'm all for it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Bob Salley to Live with Onrie. How you doing, sir?
Onrie, thanks for having me. It's been a long time, and we've been trying to make this happen, and what better time to do it than COVID America?
Yes, absolutely. And you've had quite some success. I'm jealous of you, if I'm being completely honest, for one reason and one reason only. You got stuff to promote. Everything I got is still in the back burner right now, but you've had a very successful Kickstarter campaign recently with Shelter Division, and I want to talk to you all about that as well as Broken Gargoyles. But before we get into all that, do us a favor, tell us all who you are and, why we need to pay attention to you.
Why you have to pay attention?
Sorry.
Oh God, I can just imagine whatever my answer is there, how I'm going to be. The people are going to talk about that. Why you should. So my name is Bob Salley, and I've been making comic books. Started self-publishing back in 2012, 2013, and it's just been a wild ride since. Getting everything out there, doing the conventions, and just going through the process. Like we talked about, it's a marathon, and and when you start off, I think that a lot of people feel like it's not a marathon, like it's like a sprint, and you gotta get stuff out, and you gotta keep hammering while the iron's hot, and you do, I think, in a sense, to keep the momentum going. But if you love doing it and you enjoy the process, and you're always going to be discouraged. I don't care what level you're at, you're going to get discouraged. I get discouraged. And I think it's just like persevering and continuing to go through the process and continue to improve upon the things that you might be struggling with, to keep putting out a better story and to keep being a better storyteller. So I, through the years, kept doing everything I could, because when I got into this, I just wanted to be the best that I could. And after a while, things worked out. You go to conventions, you meet the right people, and I hooked up with Source Point Press, and my books are all now on with them, published under their label, which I'm very happy about. They are amazing people over there, and Source Point Press, they keep moving up the ladder, and it's been awesome. So I write comic books. I have made science fiction comic books, fantasy comic books. I'm now writing a diesel punk comic book called Broken Gargoyles, which is out in stores right now. It just hit some stores last week, and hopefully I think it's going to be hitting another second wave of stores tomorrow. So it's been awesome. That in a nutshell, I guess, is me, and why you should be following me.
Well, now I'm going to ask you questions, and as you answer them, people will see why they should be listening to you. And by the way, one of the things I want to say that really struck a chord with me with Broken Gargoyles was how misleading the title was initially to me, and then after I read it, it actually got me to research what Broken Gargoyles, what they really were. And I got it right away as I was reading the story. But do you mind telling us a little bit about that real quick? Because I just think it's so fascinating, and how you came to this story, and everything that kind of got you to the point where you're at now.
Yeah. So, I stumbled upon the words Broken Gargoyles. I was actually doing another story with David Hayes, and it was a Western. Kind of it took place after the Civil War, and I had an idea for this character. And when I looked it up, it brought me the internet, how it just takes you down different rabbit holes. And it brought me to this term broken gargoyles. And the more and more I researched it, the more and more I felt like there was a story there that needed to be told. It made me think of Boardwalk Empires, where the one character,
yes,
he was a broken gargoyle.
Yeah.
And he was such a fascinating character.
He was the best part of that show.
Yeah, there was so much depth to him, but I feel like the reality of it and the history of it was kind of lost in, you know, in the lack of storytelling on his character. So, you know, if you read Broken Gargoyles, you'll kind of see a main character in there, Manco, who has the same kind of half ceramic face covering his wounds as that character did. And that was kind of my homage to that character because I loved them so much. And so these guys, they were in World War I. It was the first, it was like the first war where it was trench warfare, and they had these metal helmets, and the weaponry was more sophisticated. And a lot of times, what I read was like when these bullets would hit the metal helmet, it would sometimes redirect. It would ricochet, like it would go through, but it would ricochet down, and it would, you know, a lot of these people would, you know, get facially wounded from it, among other ways too. But they wouldn't, you know, they survived because modern medicine was a little more sophisticated as well. So when they came home, it was, right, you know, it's not like you're seeing somebody with a missing arm or a missing leg. You know, it's seeing somebody, I think we take for granted how much we communicate with our faces, how much we show without words with our faces. And in those times, like in the early 1920s, the world was not like it is now. There was not as much support for these veterans when they came back, and the facially wounded ones would lose their jobs. They would lose their families. A lot of them, you know, turned to alcoholism and committed suicide, and it was just really it was really hard to read. But at the same time researching it, you think about what's going on in our world today. And I thought there's a story here. And when I talked to Travis McIntyre about it, I pitched him the idea. And, he's the one that said, like, why don't we try doing that in a diesel punk world? And I was very new to diesel punk. Like, you know, I've read a little bit, but, I didn't really know the history of steampunk, diesel punk, and how, you know, steampunk kind of is like in the late 1800s. Diesel punk is in, you know, the early 1900s, and then it goes on to atom punk, and, you know, there's gothic. What is it? Ray gun gothic, and there's just so many.
I didn't even know about any of this stuff.
Yeah, it's really right, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I knew steampunk was, but I didn't really know a lot about it. I knew what cyberpunk was. But the more and more, like, I read about diesel punk, and the more and more I was doing research on the times of, like, you know, post World War I, like I was reading a lot of Steinbeck, and and also researching a lot about diesel punk. And as I was reading Steinbeck, I was reading East of Eden and Grapes of Wrath again, and it almost had, like, while you're researching both of them, or like it almost was like they kind of fit together. And I was reading Steinbeck almost like the story was in a diesel punk world. And it made it easier for me to write this story in a diesel punk world, researching both of those. But it was also just fascinating to work with Staniak as well during this process.
Incredible
and seeing him, right? You know, like, I mean, I was going through sending him like image references for for diesel punk, and the stuff he was coming back with, it was like, it was what we were looking at, but it was almost like he was making something new. And that's, you know, one of the ultimate goals, I think, as creators is, you know, coming up with something new. Like, even if, like, coming up with a new term, coming up with, you know, a new model of a car or anything, like the creative process, when we do that, like, I think we really get off on, like, hitting that, like, it's almost like, you know, hitting that drive down, like, the lane, you know, it's like, it just hit and it's perfect and it works. And Stan's art was just, I mean, I can't take credit for the story without talking about Staniak's art in it, because it's just beautiful. And then Robert Nugent comes along and colors it, along with Marco Pagnotta. And it's just like these guys, I'm writing the words, but these guys are really painting the world.
Absolutely. And you know what I'll say about this, Bob? This is one of the best comics right now, outdoing anything I see coming out of Marvel and DC. I'm sorry, my bias is in. This is seriously one of my favorite comics right now. And I want to dive back for a second. That. No, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. I really do love that series. It you know, just from what you started and where you're heading with it, it's just like that speaks to me, and even your influences and everything. I mean, it's like you've done your research, you brought this amazing art team together, and we both know how hard that is to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like I see, and it's not just your writing, it's the entire presentation, like what you're saying, the art and the coloring and just everything. Even the lettering is very well done in this book. Everything. Right. It feels like a Marvel or DC caliber book. And these days that even sounds like a little bit of a nudge against us independent creators, because we're in this position where we can't mess around. When we put something out there, we have to put everything into it. Otherwise it's, you know, we don't have customers, you know? So I want to dive back for a minute. I want to learn more about who you are and how you got into this field. So I'm going to start by asking you this. What was your first comic that you ever read? How'd you get into this like field? How did you fall into it?
The first comic I ever read, I kind of started comics late. The first comic I ever read was, it was X-Men, I want to say 241, which was the first issue in the Inferno mega series. And it, you know, and I read like a Spider-Man book when I was younger. I mean, we're talking like, I'm talking about like I was 8 or 9 years old when I read this. So that's probably pretty new, or for me at the time. But I think what helped it was that it was a part of a mega series. So, you know, every week it was. I mean, like this, like the Inferno series. Every comic ended on a cliffhanger. So you're a little kid and you're like, I got to get the next one, and then you get the next one, and then like, and that mega series lasted for, oh my God, feels like lasted for a long time. So like that got me into every Wednesday going to the comic shop, getting that new comic. And then of course, you know, like they didn't cost that much. My mom was like thrilled that I was reading comics. So she'd buy me like, you know, she'd be like, do you want any more? And you're like, all right. And then I got into Daredevil. I really liked Daredevil. And I remember it was the Daredevil, I don't know exactly what the story arc was going on. I think it was I know that Typhoid Mary was in it because I thought she was a freaking awesome character.
Yeah,
but it was where he kind of like went off the ranch. You know, like he was drinking and he was just kind of like going in and out of like small towns. And at some point, he was in some small town like helping this little girl. And Pyro and the Blob showed up and just kicked his ass. And then he kicked their, like, it was just like, and as a kid, you're just like, this is what I want. Like, this is what I want to consume every week, you know? So that started my love for comics. And then naturally I wanted to draw them. I didn't want to write. I was like, I want to draw comics. And, but I just, you know, it's not something that I was ever really that great at. And you know, you've kind of lose your way, you lose your path. You go on, you find girls, you want to learn how to skateboard, and so but you always come back to it. I always think like if it's real and if it's something that is inside you, you'll come back to it. And I did. When I went to college, I didn't know what to study. I actually wanted to be an FBI agent, and but then for whatever reason, I went to Pitt and I got into this creative writing class and I loved it. And I was like, that's going to be my major, is English and creative writing. So I did that. And, you know, I wrote a couple short stories. I published some poems, you know, did that whole route, and then just stopped. You know, it was like I had a real job and moved to Boston, and, you know,
what was your real job? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
When I got out of college, I was doing sales and marketing, and, you know, I just kind of was floating around. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then when I moved to Boston, I got into facilities management, and I loved it. You know, I didn't want a job where I felt
I did facilities management too.
Yeah, and it's probably something great for creative people, because I think like going to work, and when I was in marketing, sales and marketing, it was like every day was the same. Like you just knew, you're like, I know exactly what my day is going to be like from when I get into the office till I leave. I know like what time I'm going to go to lunch. I know what time I got to go do this. But with facilities management, it's like you don't know what you're going to do. 1 minute you could be sitting at your desk. The next minute, you could be down in the dungeons of the basement, or So I really liked it because it was like every day was like a different day. But eventually, I kind of got back into the writing, and I hit some writer's block, and then I came up with this idea of Garbage Men Cleaning Up Space, which is my Salvagers series. And I could not tell you why. I don't know why it was that moment that I was like, I'm not going to try to write this into a novel. I'm going to write this as a comic book. And I think it might have been out of my frustration with because of the writer's block and writing prose was just, I was like, you know what, I want to break from it. And I thought that it would sound good as a comic book. So I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I mean, the internet really wasn't what it is today. There was no social media. So I just figured you wrote a script and you sent it to Dark Horse. And if they liked it, they give you money. So I wrote the script, and I even like that to this day, I still use the Dark Horse template because if back then, and when I started writing this thing was 2002, 2003, and they had a submissions guideline, and they showed you their outline of how they like their scripts. So naturally, I was like, I'm going to do it that way, and I've been doing it ever since. And I self-published Salvagers, and that was definitely the way you go. Is you produce it yourself, you learn how to make a comic book, and you know how it is. It's like you make your first comic book, and it's awesome. You're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I have a comic book, and then it's like, all right, can I do it again? Can I make another comic book? Like, can I keep the series going? And if anybody's watching and taking notes about how to break into this industry, take it from me, you do not start a 12-issue story arc. Worst thing you could do.
That's actually what I've been doing for the last 10 years is a 12-issue story
right,
arc.
Exactly.
That's exactly how I got my start.
Right. And that's what everybody thinks big picture. But the harder story to tell is a one-shot.
Yes, I agree with you. When you have less space to tell a story, I agree with you 100%.
But the thing is, and again, like you have to do the process. You have to make your mistakes. Andy Schmidt, he has a great program online called Comics Experience, where you can take classes on writing, art, lettering, coloring, inking, like everything. Comics Experience, check it out. Andy Schmidt. At the time, like I didn't have the money or the time, and I don't even know if he was probably still at Marvel at the time. But I think back, and I mean, I know that like I made a lot of mistakes in certain things that I have produced, but it makes you aware of, not to do them again. Because when you're paying somebody, out of your own pocket to make a comic book, and then you look back and you see the mistakes you made, you're the one that paid for that. So it's you're paying yourself to learn lessons, and it's expensive. So you really do. You're like, I'm not going to make that mistake again. The process is what it is. You learn from it. You gain experience from it. If you're going to conventions like we talked about, you get to meet other people in the industry. That builds connections with art teams. It helps you maybe, know somebody who can get you an in with a publisher or a printer. But it's comic books. One of the things I'd have to say that comic books in the industry is a huge family, and there's very little times do you see anybody not trying to support somebody in the industry. It's one of those things where if everybody out there, their individual success is success for the industry, and success for the industry filters out to everybody else in the industry. If somebody reads a good comic book, that doesn't mean that they're not going to go out and pick up other comic books. That's actually the opposite. If somebody reads a good comic book, they're going to be like, all right, that's an awesome experience.
I agree with that.
Out there. And if somebody reads a good independent self-published comic book, they're going to trust that, you know, there's value out there in self-published indie comic books. So, you know, when I came in, it was like I realized that it seemed like there was a lot of people that were in competition, but I feel like that has changed over the years, where people realize like your success is all of our success. You know, I remember when I was talking to somebody else who did a sci-fi comic book, and that god awful sci-fi movie, like I think it was called Valeria. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know vaguely what you're talking about, but keep going.
But that movie came out, and this person that I was talking to, who also did a sci-fi book, they were like, "Oh, I hope that movie sucks." And I'm like, "No, like you want that movie to be great, because
yes.
Then producers and directors will be like, what else? Like that worked. What else?
Yes. What else is there? So you know what I'm really upset about right now? Everybody dissing Mulan.
Right.
That's not good for me. You know, I would much rather people be absolutely crazy for that movie, because then they're going to want to get into other Asian stuff. So, you know, you want stuff that's in the similar genre to be successful with it, because then more people are going to want more of that thing. And that is so true. And you're right. You know, I guarantee you, Bob, over the last 10 years that I've been in the business, and I'm not sure how long you've been, but I'm sure you and I are you've probably been in there longer than I have, or about the same time, whatever the case is. I'm sure we've helped each other sell books indirectly without even realizing it, because someone likes your work. They're like, yeah, I really like independent comics because I had the chance to read Salvagers by Bob Salley, you know, and now I want to buy something else. You know, I want to check out this other thing, because I think it's the authenticity too of meeting us at these shows, because like when people get to talk to us and they see that we really care about what we're doing, because I think that's another aspect of it. And God damn it, man, you and I, we are so cut from the same cloth, it's not even funny. And, you know, of course that's the case. That's why we've never had a chance to talk. Because when we go to shows, we're not messing around. When you told me you had a sales and marketing background, I was like, the second you told me that, I was like, that's how he knows how to win people. You must have learned something over there that, you know, or just in general, just being yourself.
Well, you know, it's like, so what I think is, not to get too far off topic, but like when I was doing sales and marketing, I was selling these little chips that went into like missiles that helped them talk to the radar system, and like
that's fucking awesome, dude. That's such a cool thing to sell.
I was like, this is boring. Like, you know, I'm selling diodes and amplifiers and antennas, like things that like you can barely see with the naked eye, and I wasn't good at it, right? I mean, like and one of the guys that was also a sales guy there, like he said, he was like, you have to believe in what you're selling. And I'm like, well, that's just it. Like, I don't believe in this thing. But later on in life, as I'm like sitting at conventions and talking to people and trying to sell them my comic book, you know, people would be like, you know, you sold me on your passion alone for this thing. And you realize like, this is the thing I love. Like, I love this thing. And so it makes it easier to sell, because people they feel your passion for it. They feel your love for what you did, and they're like, I want a piece of that, you know. And it's not, you know, Stan Konopka once said, he was like, people don't buy my comics, they buy me. I sell them me, and then they root for me. So they're like, I'm going to buy your comic because I want you to succeed. And
who said this?
Stan Konopka. He's the writer on The Rejected. That's also on Source Point Press.
That is a phenomenal quote, and I agree with that 100%. People are absolutely buying us when they're picking up, you know, our books, and I think that's what makes it so hard being in this COVID situation, is that you have kind of like two roads you can travel down right now as a creator, because of the fact that I think that what we do works so much better when we're in person, because people can actually see us. We have their attention. The convention has done the job of getting them through the door, but now we've had a chance to actually, you know, engage them and do all that stuff. But another thing, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were on to say something.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, what I was going to say is, you know, coming back to what you were saying about your sales experience, see, that still helped you realize how you needed to sell, because you were in an environment that didn't work. When I was in facilities, I absolutely dreaded my job. I hated it because it was not related to comics. And when I first started, I was making all these mistakes, and I was just I hated my job, and I couldn't quit because it was paying me too damn well. And then I kind of fell into it. And eventually I was like, all right, if I want to get out of here, I need to build skills in order to learn all these things. And I got to tell you, 10 years, it's been 10 years as of this week that I quit that job and have pursued a career in comics since. And not one day goes by that I don't look back on those experiences and say to myself, this is what made me a better, convention self-publishing guy, is having those experiences working in those jobs. Because like you said, when you work in facilities, your days are changing consistently. Like one day you're literally at your desk. Sometimes you're weeks at your desk, and all of a sudden there's like a fucking meltdown, and you got to figure out, you got to problem solve on the spot how to solve it. And, it's interesting that you got into sales in that way and realized, okay, selling, I never had sales experience. So for me, it was like the same thing as you. I just kind of fell into it. And I think what really works with your approach is it's not that you're trying to sell me something. It's that I can feel your confidence. I know that you really believe in your work. And I've read your work, and I know that you're not just bullshitting when you're making comics. You're not just putting stuff out just to see how much you can get out. And I want to talk to you now about Shelter Division, which is a book that I backed on Kickstarter. That's actually the first book I bought from you. And I'm so excited. It's coming out soon, isn't it?
Yes. I believe that I want to say that it's going to be going out at the end of this month for the printers. So God willing, the backers should be expecting it like October, November. So
I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait. So I got to be honest with you. I didn't even watch the video. I was like, Bob Salley, all right, cool. He's running a Kickstarter. We're in this situation right now. We got to support each other. I got his back. I'm going to fucking do this. And I'm so excited about this book now because the artwork looks fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about Shelter Division?
Yeah, so Shelter Division was like 3 different concepts that I had that weren't working. As a writer, we constantly have this person talking into our voice, and it's like, here's an idea, and you're like, nah, it's probably not a good idea. Like, I probably shouldn't take that one to my editor-in-chief. And then you're like, this one, feels good. So I had 3 of these ideas, and just none of them were really working out. And so I just put them away. And I was working on Salvagers, and I started doing Jasper Starlight Tavern, which is like the funny little web comic that I do with my friend Jason Sparich and Juan Kali. And then I don't know, one day, I think I was playing around. I'm like, I wanted to do something else. As writers, we give our scripts to our artists. And, back in the day, I think it took George 8 months to do one comic. So it was just, painfully slow. So you're like, well, I want to do something else. So I'm going to keep writing. And so I took these 3 ideas and I came together, and, and it's a very classic, what is it? The BRPD, there's these extraordinary characters that are all grouped together. And what you have is you have a guy who's immortal. You have the son of Bigfoot, and you have the Roswell alien. And they are all, they've all been captured by the government, and the government gives them a place to live because obviously they can't be out there in society. The way the world is now, Bigfoot, he'll end up coming across some campground and getting shot. The Roswell alien is an alien, so he can't just frolic around America. So they give him this place that they can be, kind of like a sanctuary. And they've dubbed it Shelter Division, and they investigate the abnormal. And it was just the idea of it was kind of bringing these characters together, and each of them sees the establishment which has given them refuge differently. And now where they all work together, they all see their place in this world differently. And as the story unfolds, more and more breakdown happens within that unit, that team unit. And, the more and more we get to see of what the world is like. But, in the very first one, we're dealing with, this madman from another dimension who has figured out a way to open up a doorway through dimensions. And they're going to stop him. I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah. Sounds cool as shit, though. You got me sold on it already.
This is like a a 3-volume story arc that, like, I think, again, like we talk about improving our craft, like I realized what I did wrong with Salvagers is I started it without knowing where I was going to end it. But this one, I was like, I need to know where I'm going to end it. And I worked, from the beginning and the end to meet in the middle. So for this one, like, I know, like, I have it all mapped out for 3 volumes. And when I presented that to Source Point Press and Travis McIntyre, that was the first story that I signed with them, not Salvagers. The first story I signed with them was Shelter Division. And he loved the idea, so we started working on it. And then, as things happened, things fell apart through the production process. And I think it was the first time that I was ever discouraged with working with a team and producing, putting together a creative team. And so it kind of took a back burner, it sat on the back burner. And then as I was going to conventions, the more and more I was going to conventions, I was interacting with different artists. And Ken Perry, who did Wretched Things with Comics Experience, now published through Source Point Press. It's Ken Perry, and Devin Wong was the writer on Wretched Things. And Ken and I would talk. We'd be at conventions because he's a Boston guy too. And he was just like, let's work on something together. And so he's like, what do you have that, what do you have? What are you already working on? Like, what's something that you already have? So I was like, well, I have this Shelter Division, and I told him, the history of it. And he read the first issue that I had, and he was like, let's do it. So Ken has been a big part of kind of reinvigorating the passion that I had for Shelter Division back into the story. And, this was actually slated to hit previews at the same time that Broken Gargoyles was, or it was going to overlap in like a little bit. But with COVID, we decided, let's do it as a Kickstarter. Let's do something special. I met Nick Dragotta, who is was the artist on East of West. And he did this beautiful picture of Biggs, who is the son of Bigfoot. And, and I had his permission to do anything I wanted with it. Like I said, like if I ran a Kickstarter, he was like, have at it. So we decided, we have this beautiful art. Like, let's make a volume 1 with Nick Dragotta's art on it, where you can only get it through the Kickstarter. So that made it kind of special for me because I've been dying to get that art out. And also I felt like at the time with COVID, it wasn't insensitive to do it. And it seemed like, that's where people were looking. People couldn't go to comic shops to buy their comics. Nothing new was coming out. So it seemed like, it would be a good idea. And we just did a 15-day Kickstarter. And, for 15 days, it did really well. So
it did phenomenal. And I got to tell you, you guys did make it special. That was one of those Kickstarters where after I backed it, I felt satisfied because it was put out by a publisher that knew what they were doing. It was put out by a creator who knew what he was doing. And you've had lots of experience with Kickstarters. We both know how hard they can be. But the thing I got to give you most credit for, Bob, is you truly do give off the impression of someone who knows how to take a hit and keep on coming. And just seeing how you've managed to turn everything that you've been doing throughout your career into all these multiple projects that are all very high caliber in terms of production. Like, I love everything that's coming out of you right now. That sounds kind of strange, but I'm looking forward to it. And one of the reasons why it means so much to me as somebody who's in the business too is I'm going through this process. What I've decided to do is during this process is come up with a new project and actually start writing something new. And for me, comics has always been a little bit different. I don't think we're comic book writers. I think that we're like directors. We're comic book directors because we got to pick our project. We got to research the fucking shit out of it. And then we got to write it out. And then we got to hire the art team. We're basically overseeing everything. And we're working with publishers to get it out there, to distribute it. And we're also selling it on the floor whenever the occasion rises. That's so, yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to getting into it, it's, it's a constant grind, even though we're not putting out like as much content to say a Marvel or DC writer. I think they are writers. I believe it is different in their case because they have to constantly, they're on a series already. They're like established writers. That doesn't mean we're not established though, because I think we have a different role. And is it just me or I love doing it. I get the impression that you do too. It seems like this is more what you would rather be doing than sitting in a room writing scripts all day.
Right. I mean, I can't imagine that anybody who starts doing comic books at the beginner level can make it successful without loving it, because it sucks. I mean,
it does suck.
Like I'm sorry to say it, but like it sucks. Like, I mean, it's anybody who's a writer will tell you that it's so much easier to just like put on something and stream it and just binge watch something than actually sit down in front of a computer and look at a blank page and write something. Like, but once it starts happening, you know, like I always think of it like I love running. You know, I love to go out for runs. And while I'm putting my sneakers on before I go out for the run, like I'm thinking like, God, like I'd much rather just go right back to bed. Like I'd rather sleep in. But I also know that the first couple miles are going to be tough, but the last ones are going to be like the pain's going to go away. You're going to hit your stride. And you're going to remember, like, this is what, like, I feel good. And then when it's over, you're going to be like, I am so glad. I feel amazing. I'm so glad that I came out here and I did this. It's the same with writing. You know, when you're sitting there and you're like, all right, like, I gotta start this. I'm going to start this new script. And in your mind, you're just like, like,
dude, you know, I'm fucking feeling
like, so, but then once you start going, like, once you've been writing for an hour, and then you're in that second, third hour, like it's just starting to flow. And when you look at that, and then when you look at, you know, that you've just written 10 pages, 15 pages, you know, and 3 or 4 hours went by and you're like, I got some bad stuff in there, but I also have some really good stuff in there. And I know that as I keep working on it, the bad stuff
will get better.
Yeah. Yep. So it sucks. Like it's tough. Like it's not easy. And, you know, if it was, then, you know,
everybody would be fucking doing it.
Right.
Oh, dude, I got to tell you, see, it's like one of those situations where it's like, I can't pee if someone's watching me kind of a thing. And that's the same way I feel about writing. Like the stars need to be aligned. And like, I have to fucking feel like the Zen coming on because
we're precious people.
Oh, we totally are. But you know, here's the thing. It's like, we're building a house of cards. And then you realize something like, I'm currently like finally fucking getting like halfway done with my next project, like the actual script for the first issue. And I've just figured out how I wanted to structure it and everything. But getting to just this point took years of my life. And it's just like I start writing a half a script and then I think back of the inconsistency there. And I have to knock that house of cards down and start building it again. And then I realize something else, knock it back down and you start building it again. That's what it is. And it's really kind of like what you were saying about running too. Those first few miles suck because you don't want to be doing what you're doing. You would rather be in a stationary position, you know, just resting or watching shoving food down your mouth. Exactly. But once you start going through and your body kind of wakes up and everything, you get that jolt and that those endorphins kick in, you become greater than you thought you felt, you know, and then all of a sudden you finish it and you're like, I fucking conquered the world and you feel great about it.
Oh yeah. There's no better feeling.
That's how I feel about, you know, comic book sales. Like I love it. You know, just every convention experience, you know, I also think that there's something to be said about people who know how to take a good rejection. You know what I mean?
God, yeah. You better be in comics and you're going to go to conventions. You better be ready for more people turning you down than to accepting your comic.
Yeah. And that actually is exactly why I agree with you that we all need to support each other, because again, it's like you said, there are people, if people are walking in the small press area, wherever we're stationed or artist alley or wherever, they're already there because they've done everything that they need to do. And they're just looking to kill time now. And this
Right.
is our moment to really shine and get that extra 20 or 40 bucks out of their pocket. You just never know. But I think as, we see conventions come back and things really pick up, I think what you're going to see is a lot of people who missed out on it wanting to make up for it. And I really hope that we get through this, because I really want to see you back on the convention floors, my friend. I think it's going to be a different game when we get back to work.
I hope so, man. It'd be really nice to. I could go for a convention right about now.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm really bummed out about New York this year, but I am excited to see that there are so many people out there who are still pushing it. Have you been doing any online conventions or?
Yeah, I've done a couple. They're fun because we did different things, and a couple of us grouped up together to do them. So, it's always nice to, do these talks and have other people that you haven't seen in a while, and the camaraderie comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that you're going to have to go in about 5 minutes, so I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I'll give you a chance to, do a final shout out and everything. But as you've been going through this process, the one thing that I've noticed about you in particular, I've kind of hid away in my den and in this writing mode, but here you are promoting. You've had a successful Kickstarter campaign. You have a successful launch for your book. Could even be a double launch. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you, buddy. I hope you get another sellout this week at all the other shops you end up in. I am rooting for you. In this situation where you cannot go out and do everything, what has changed for you, and how have you adapted to this situation?
I definitely have been trying to push more on social media, trying to figure out how to reach an audience that I haven't reached yet, to make them aware of the books out there. I even went as far as created a TikTok, because I was like, if it's out there, I'm going to try it, see if there's any way that I can use it to, reach an audience. But it's more just, just doing things like this and staying available to talk to people and, going, just checking on people, like we've all been home, and, there's some of us out there that, conventions was really important to their income. So just checking on them and make sure, so if you're a fan out there and you're listening and, you miss one of your favorite artists, send them a message. He might get it, he might not get it, she might get it, she might not get it. But if you can reach somebody, this is affecting a lot of people that, we haven't really even thought about, that, made a living through going to conventions. So, if there are people out there that you supported at conventions, check them out online, see what they're doing. They might have a Kickstarter. They might have an online shop where they're putting new stuff out there, and, support them online as well as you were when you were supporting them at conventions.
Yeah, that's very well said, Bob. Thank you so much. I as somebody who's a part of that community, that what you said just now really spoke to me. Now I know you have somewhere else to be right now. Tell us all where you have to go, and then no, please.
No, so I need to organize more. I've got a new comic book out, and it's out in the shop. So go to your comic book store, ask them for Broken Gargoyles, grab a bunch of Source Point Press books. But yeah, I double booked, and I got another YouTube interview to do, which I'm excited about. It's going to be like a little game of independent self-published books that we're going to be discussing. So, but again, I love doing these things. If you are watching this, you can find me on social media, Bob_Salley on Twitter. It's Bob Salley _comics on Instagram. And if you find me on Facebook, reach out. I love talking to people, and that's where it's I feel like that's my virtual office. So I'm usually always on there, and I'm always available. So reach out. And again, if you get the comic, I'd love to talk to you about it, see what your feelings are. Like I say at conventions, I'd love to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. So thank you very much for having me on.
Well said, Bob. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. I wish you the best of luck with everything. Usually what I love to do with my guests is after the show is over, I like to have a couple minutes with them so I can have words with them behind the stage. Unfortunately, that's not going to work out today, but
we could talk tomorrow.
Just whenever you like, man. The door's always open, and I look forward to seeing you at conventions again and getting more acquainted with you and your work. Best of luck to you. Yes, awesome. Yes, sir. Yeah, knock on wood. All right, take care, brother. See you later. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Yep. Oh, well, I shut Bob out. I apologize for that. But he's off to bigger and better things, and it is such an honor to have finally had a chance to speak with him tonight. He's somebody that I really wanted to get on the show because it's like, when you're in this field, it is very you're kind of like in your own bubble most of the time, like your own like fortress of solitude. And when you're there, you have all these thoughts about what you're producing and like how it's going to turn out and what people are going to think about it. And then you get out there and you start pushing it and you see somebody else pushing their own products and you nod to them because it's like, hey, you can't be the only one doing this. There's other people who are always going to be pushing their stuff too. And, but it is such an aggressive thing when you get out onto the floor. As independent creators, we have to constantly push our stuff. We have to constantly get stuff out there. And in the process of doing that, we become so busy doing that we don't really have a chance to like talk to people as much as we would like to. We try and make an effort. And I think it is a very important aspect of going to conventions is to network. But at the same time, when you're there to work and it's been a long day, you get kind of wiped out talking to people all day long. And, you typically don't. What I always feel is I don't want to bother somebody while they're doing business. So I typically don't walk up to people during convention hours while they're in the middle of working. Coming up to an artist, I think, is a little bit different because they're in a more of a stationary position, and you can talk and draw at the same time. Some artists can, perhaps there are some that can't. But generally speaking, that's kind of what goes on with artists. When you're a writer, you can't really draw. You're not really making money. You kind of got to move around when you're at conventions. And it was interesting to hear that Bob and I had similar backgrounds in facilities management because that's literally what I was doing for 10 years. There would be times when I'd have to break down tech setups and I'd have to like carry like these mounts that had monitors on them and I couldn't take them off the mounts because I would have to make more trips. So I was trying to layer it with some bubble wrap, and then I put like another layer on there, and here I am dragging this thing in the streets of Chicago, and it's packed time, and everybody's out for lunch and everything, and it's crazy. And doing conventions is not much different than that. I remember in Baltimore Comic-Con last year, the wait to get in to unload all your stuff was like about 8 hours. There was something going on that weekend that just made it so inefficient and bureaucratic. So Kevin and I, we drove to the front of the convention center and we just started unloading. And I would have to make runs and go back and forth. And I was carrying like a lot of stuff. I had probably about, 1,000 pounds worth of inventory with me that I was lugging around. And I had to go by myself, and I couldn't use an elevator because they wouldn't allow me to use the elevator. And then a cop came by and threatened us, and we had to drive all around and do it again because we were only halfway there. And then we finally just we waited for that cop to leave, and we went back. And I don't recommend anybody do this, but just kind of giving you a sense of what the experience of this is like. And then you unload everything, and where I unloaded everything, and then you got to go the next day and you got to set up and you got to get to work. And, once you're there, it doesn't matter what's going on in your head. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter if you had a bad night sleep. It doesn't matter if you just found out that your dog died or any other kind of crisis that could have happened. The second you step on the floor, you got to be there for the audience. And it's really hard. I mean, I know guys who have lost their parents while they were at a convention. Russell Nolte's his father died in the middle of, right on the weekend of LA Comic-Con one year, and he was there. And I could tell he didn't want to be there. And sometimes you just have to suck it up and do your job because there's not really much else you can do. But it doesn't mean that you're not feeling it and that it can affect you and that you won't have a bad day or whatever the case is. But, just kind of like what Bob was saying, he's the kind of guy that knows how to take a hit and keep on coming. And it was a real pleasure speaking with him today. It was it's good to know that there are other people that are like-minded out there. And I think that's why it's so important for us to reach out to our communities and be a part of them and to support them, especially in these times right now, because of the fact that everybody's so divided over politics that it's really hard to engage people in the sense that you don't want to offend anybody, regardless of what their beliefs are. I have a firm policy of respecting people, and if you're good to me, then I will be good to you. And, I don't necessarily have to agree with everything you say or feel, but I acknowledge that you're a human being just like me, and you're not perfect just like me, and that's okay. And it's okay to be wrong sometimes. It's okay to say you're sorry. It's okay to be off your game on some days. And, that's actually kind of something I'm dealing with right now. I'm doing the whole e-learning thing with my kid, and it's really hard because he should be in school, and, instead he's here, and that takes time away from me to do other things and I need to take care of. And you get frustrated, and it's not that I'm mad at him, he's just a kid. But when you got all these other situations going on, you got writer's block you're dealing with, or, just you have another project that's due, and, you got to take care of stuff around your house, and, you got to make sure your kids are fed, and you got to, take care of all these other things. It can get distracting, and you can get frustrated, and sometimes you are going to let out, and it's not going to be fun, and that's okay. That's what happens. And what we try and do at the end of the day is forgive ourselves for our imperfections and wake up the next day and hope that we will be better people tomorrow. And I have to say, I've learned a lot this year, even though I've been away from conventions. I do miss it tremendously, but it's being away has allowed me to grow exponentially. And I am confident that I will be back to work next year. I am confident that we will feel most of us will feel comfortable going back to conventions over the course of the next year. Maybe not right away. Maybe not every convention is going to be packed right away. Maybe it'll be a little bit died down, and we'll need to kind of adjust to that. But, as long as there's a point where things can gradually get back into the swing of things, I think that's what the majority of us want. And I don't think we want to see everything go to shit. And, I think most of us want peace, and I honestly hope we get there. These are some pretty crazy times on top of all the other things that are going on too. So if you're listening and you're watching this, I hope you're staying safe, and, take care of yourself. And, there's no reason not to believe that better days are ahead. There's been no indication why we should think that the worst is yet to come. Let's try and be a little bit more optimistic and say the best is yet to come. When I first started working on Yisun Shin, it's not like, the world was ending then too. We were in a crisis. It wasn't a pandemic or whatever, it wasn't as bad as that. But, when I was putting Yisun Shin out, there were a lot of people losing their jobs, and, things were really bad. There was a huge economic, turnaround and stuff. There was a housing crisis. There was all kinds of stuff. Things were bad then too. That was not the time to start a comic book company. And sure enough, that's what I did. And everybody was telling me it's not going to work. It's not going to get anywhere. It's not going to mean anything. And, I just kept at it, and I kept ignoring what everybody was thinking. And then eventually I started to see a difference, and I started to learn things, and I figured out how I could actually turn this into a business where I could pay myself and have enough money to continue producing projects. And it's not impossible. It just, really takes determination and having confidence in yourself. If there's one thing I could say about Bob, it's that his experience working in comics has made him very confident. He presents himself very well. In fact, I will go as far as to say all of our guests who have been on this show have done that. They all exude confidence. And that's a very important aspect of what we do. That's what allows us to stay in the game. And that's what makes us love it so much, is because this is what we're born and bred to do. And so there's no reason to believe that this is it and that we won't ever see conventions again. They'll be back before you know it. And when they come back, they'll come back better than ever. We've seen Diamond come back. New content is coming out. I'm going to comic shops. I'm buying stuff. Do the same thing. Go to your local comic shop. Read Bob Salley's book. Again, Broken Gargoyles, great stuff. And Shelter Division sounds fucking phenomenal. I can't wait to read that too. And, you know, read comics. That's it. You know, there's lots of great stuff out there. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow. I got a great guest lined up for you. I really hope he's another one of those guys that I've been trying to get for a long time, and he's been so busy. So I really hope I'm going to check in with him right now, make sure that he's still down to come on for tomorrow. And I will see you guys then. Until then, take care. And as always,